Hello and welcome to Horror Bois. It's a podcast on the internet. I'm Austin, joined as always by
Chris
and Isaiah,
and we are the Horror Bois. And this is us talking about horror movies every week. We do it. It's a podcast. We review horror movies. Yeah. So we're gonna talk about a horror movie. I mean, there's nothing really else to say there. I mean, I don't know what else.
And
from
you know
these
what?
Intro fans.
We're going to talk about horror movies.
Yeah. Specifically,
what else?
this week, we are starting our journey on the highs and lows that is the Texas Chain Saw Massacre franchise. And we are starting with a high, in my opinion. Spoiler. Yeah, we're going to start with the original, the 1974... I hate to say classic, because classic typically just thrown into things that are old, but I genuinely think this is a very good movie. It's the Texas Chain Saw Massacre. There is a space in between chain and saw. Grammatically, it is incorrect, but that is how the title of this movie is. Only this one. They correct it for all other movies, but this movie is the Texas Chain Saw Massacre.
Well, just like a lot of other things in this movie, we'll find out that the 70s were a different time.
Yeah, no, that's fair. This movie was direct.
Chainsaws were saws made of chains. Just little...
made of chains.
Yeah.
Like, constituted. Okay.
Okay.
And everyone hates cripples for some reason. I don't know. The weird thing in the 70s.
Yeah, just a little bit. And this movie was directed and co-written by Tobe Hooper, as well as the other co-writer was Kim Henkel. I've been trying to do that more in the last few podcasts, trying to make this seem more professional, give credit to the directors and writers at the beginning, because we're respectable horror reviewers.
Yeah.
Not
like those others.
Yeah, not like those others.
Gallery.
Us from the first 20 episodes. Those losers didn't care anything about, it's Wes Craven, we'll give him credit, but that's it.
What a bunch of amateurs those guys were.
Yeah.
Are.
Not us. We're professionals. And, peek behind the curtain, this is our third time trying to record this today, because my brain's not working today, so fair warning that this might go off the rails. Just want to let everyone know. I want everyone to just be prepared. As we open with some narration that's going over a title crawl, kind of explaining basically what we're about to see, I guess. Very much treating it like it's a real story. It's not, but they are acting like there was a real massacre in 73, kind of a thing.
Not with the same camera style, but it seems to anticipate things like the Blair Witch Project and all the other found footage type movies that followed.
Fair.
What you're about to see is through that kind of thing. Yeah. Which they do later in this franchise.
All right. Well.
Yay.
in a worse version. We'll get to it.
And then we end this little title card narration with a date of, I want to say it's August of 73. So that's our setting for this movie is, 73.
Everyone's favorite year.
More of a 76 man myself, I guess.
I'm more of a summer of 1969 kind of guy.
Yes.
Summer of 69, yeah. The best years of my life, I gotta say.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah.
If I was alive, but I've been told it was the best years of somebody's life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways.
It
Regardless. It certainly will not be the best years of our main characters' lives.
No. Then after we get past the crawl, we still have some narration throughout the rest of this till the credits, but we get the iconic flashbulb sound effects.
Yes.
Which in this movie is used very well and sparingly, and in some of the sequels, from my understanding, is used randomly for no meaning, just because, hey, remember this sound. So, hey, remember this sound.
It'll be this sound and Wilhelm's scream that I will always remember.
Yeah.
Is there Wilhelm scream in this one?
I don't think
I
so.
don't believe
Oh,
so.
dude. Okay, I was hoping you'd pick one out. Yeah, I didn't catch one.
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah, we have some kind of while the flash bulb is actually being used for like a camera lighting up a scene, as we have a bunch of shots of these decomposing body. And then we transition from that while narration is happening overall. Just kind of, I think it's like a newscaster, kind of like describing
Yeah,
the
it's
plight
like
that's
a-
happening in that year.
It's a story about a grave robber.
It starts as that, but then like kind of just devolves into general news. Like it gets, which is I like. It kind of makes you feel like it's a real news broadcast. They're not just talking about the thing we're seeing. They also kind of, I want to say they talk about like, I don't remember what, I didn't write down the exact things they talked about, but they did go past just the grave robbings. But that is the important part as we see these two bodies that have been, I mean, desecrated, sure, but like propped up in like a living art almost, a very morbid, but like like they're like, it's like a man and a woman, and like the man's kind of in like a cross formation. I think they're sitting on top of a cross in like a graveyard. Yeah, and the radio broadcast is about the grave robberies. Before we transition into the credits, which are really pretty and weird. I believe the credits are over like really like done like effects on a like solar flares, I believe is what is the weird imagery we're seeing there, because you can't tell, but I believe I read that that's what it is. Which, yeah.
Well, more news plays in the background.
Yes.
What's interesting,
all of the different like murders and how like the world's kind of just going to crap.
Yeah.
Yes,
it's
it suggests a wide phenomenon of violence.
Kind of lending to the air that this really could be a true story. All this wild, senseless violence that happens.
Yeah, because we're like
it could happen to you.
You could, especially like in '74. This is like right during the Vietnam War. Like the world is dealing with some real crap right now, and this movie is obviously not directly like a commentary on just the Vietnam War, but kind of on the violence in society at this time frame.
Human upheaval,
also, like,
violence,
the rise of the first serial killers in America too.
Yeah. And
I didn't even think about that. Yeah,
and a damning take on farming as well, like commercial farming. Like there is an element of them being kind of anti meat farming, which it's got its issues.
Certainly,
yeah. But after the credits, we meet our group of teens that are some of them are in their 20s. At least one of them is like at least in his 30s. But hey,
yeah. And I was gonna say one of them looks like they are almost 40.
Yeah. We have Kirk, who he's kind of just a dude.
Yeah. I would say that he's supposed to be like the good-looking guy of the group, but he's not.
That's fair.
They're all kind of just ugly dudes from the 70s.
We also got Jerry, who he's there.
He has glasses. That is his defining feature. Yes. And a little bit of an afro.
And he gives off very like
the groovy one.
70s disco vibes.
Yeah.
We also have what's the girl's name? That's not Pam.
Horoscope lady.
No, we got Pam, who she's into astrology. That's her character trait.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we got our two siblings, one of which will be our like first ever final girl. Like deserves credit. This movie deserves credit for that. Like this, I mean, you could hate the final girl trope, I guess, but this movie did it before like anyone else did it. So
before it was a trope.
Yeah, it wasn't a trope. It was just, hey, let's have Sally survive. Yeah, so we got Sally Hardesty and her brother Franklin. I assume also Hardesty. But I say that, but then there was one weird line that I might have wrote down when it happens later. But they refer to their home as the old Franklin house, which makes me wonder if at some point their family name was Franklin. I don't know.
Yeah, like Franklin was named after
like the last name of their family at some point.
Right.
It was, I don't know.
Other members,
or it was
just like Mario. He's Franklin.
He's Franklin. She's Sally Hardesty, but he's Franklin. But yeah, we meet them, and they're in a van, and that's gonna be most of the first half of this movie is them in a van. It is definitely that. I mean, it was before it was being done, but that classic, slasher, really slow burn at the beginning as we kind of just meet these characters.
Another classic slasher element is like the slow burn happens in this trip into the American interior.
Yes.
It's never like we're heading to, we're on our way inside downtown San Francisco or something.
We're heading to
woods.
Manhattan by way of boat.
Yeah. Well, okay. You were correcting me. That did happen. I forgot that.
That is, and it's one of the worst of that franchise. So
I stand corrected. Yeah.
Sally Hardesty is played by Marilyn Burns. I don't know if she's done anything else, but she is, of our teens, the best acted. So I will give her credit for her actress credit. She passed away, I believe, back in 2015. But yeah, credit to her. She did the best of them. Is that saying that her acting was great? No, but she wasn't completely one-dimensional like some of the other characters.
She wasn't terrible, but keep in mind, this is a 70s slasher movie.
It's true.
So, the bar for acting it's right above the ground.
It's a little negative, but yes, I don't fully disagree. I think I don't. To be fair,
not to say that Sally's not a good actor.
I'll even say, to this movie's credit, I can't. We've watched some movies where I go, man, that person, their acting was terrible. I didn't personally see any actors in this where I went, oh my gosh, they're terrible. There were some that weren't good, but none of them were like, oh gosh, why are you here? There was no Freddy versus Jason teen acting in this movie.
And, thank goodness for that.
Yeah.
And none of the acting takes you out of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but nothing really blows you away either.
I personally did really love Jim Sedow's acting as the cook. But that's the closest to great acting. And I would not even call it great. But yeah, let's get back to the plot. They stop to let Franklin pee.
That's right.
Is our first scene.
Oh, jeez, yeah.
Which is, first, actually, there's a really pretty shot. Because once again, I want to give this movie tons of credit when it comes to the cinematography. This movie is beautiful. Especially for the time and, I love the cinematography in this movie. We open on this really weirdly beautiful shot of, a dead armadillo on the road. Really low angle and stuff. And this is, the cinematographer is Daniel Pearl, who we actually have watched one of his movies before. Because he was the cinematographer for the Friday the 13th reboot.
Oh, what year was that? Do you remember off the top of your head? Okay. Wow.
I think he's also the cinematographer for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre reboot, but, we have a couple more weeks to get to that one.
Yeah. A couple.
So they stop and they let Franklin pee into a coffee can, but he gets, spooked by a car, I guess. I don't know what happens, but for some reason he falls, down the hill out of his wheelchair. Because, by the way, he's in a wheelchair. We didn't mention that when we mentioned who Franklin is. His one character trait is... Actually, he has two character traits. He is in a wheelchair, and he's kind of annoying.
I suppose. I mean...
Here's the thing. I did have sympathy for him because he's treated like pure trash in this, but then also was kind of annoying with the way he whined. Don't get me wrong, I get why he was whining, but his whining was slightly grating.
He is a whiner.
Yeah.
He's a whiner.
Which, credit to, I didn't write down that actor's name, sorry, but he actually went mildly method in the sense of, he thought that Franklin was such a whiny character that he didn't want to get out of that character because he didn't know if he'd get back into it. So he was just kind of a person people didn't really like on set the whole time until after they wrapped and like, oh, he's a cool guy. But he kind of just tried to be Franklin the whole time they were filming. Which I believe Marilyn Burns does say that it made it easier for the times where her character gets aggravated with him. She just wasn't acting. She was just kind of irritated with him at that point. So
perfect teamwork.
Yeah. But yeah, because of a loud truck, he falls down a hill. I don't know why this scene is really in the movie. I guess to immediately establish, look at this poor cripple. He's a cripple. I guess. I don't...
I think it's something like that. I mean, I guess the interesting thing about Franklin is that he is something like comic relief. He's funnier than the other characters, but it's never because he's falling down. That always. I think we're meant to pity that scene, right? Or pity him in that scene. But he's got funny lines and kind of a funny. I mean, he's not like this hilarious knee slapper or anything, but he's much like quirkier and clownier than the others, but never because of being in a wheelchair. So I don't know. In this scene, I guess we're just immediately meant to feel bad for Franklin, but also kind of get introduced to the fact that his character is not really like, he just kind of dusts himself off and gets in the wheelchair again. He doesn't like start crying or anything like he does later about other stuff.
Starts blowing raspberries, which we'll get to.
Yeah,
There's
extreme
a lot of raspberries in this movie.
So many raspberries.
They are forceful.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
Well, they all get back in the car after Franklin tumbles down his hill, and they head to the graveyard where Sally and Franklin's grandpa was buried. Because as we mentioned in the crawl, we heard the, not the crawl, but like the flashbulb scenes. We heard about like how there's been grave robbings afoot. So they're going to check to make sure that their granddad he hasn't been desecrated, which I believe the takeaway is that he wasn't. I believe they go to his grave and it is fine. While Sally is off heading to check on the grave, we do get a little harbinger who warns Franklin that, weird stuff happens around here.
Good old drunk man on the floor.
Yeah.
Like sitting in a tire, leaning back. Practically upside down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty good harbinger.
And once again, I don't know. I'm trying to think, like, timeline-wise, this might be one of the first, like, horror movie harbingers. I'm sure it's, like, a literary thing that goes back further, because that's what a lot... Entertainment and literature is cyclical. They copy each other way back when. But I believe this is one of the first harbingers in a horror movie. Definitely, it kind of established it as a slasher trope. Because this is basically the first slasher. Because this movie came out in, like, August of 1974, while Black Christmas comes out December of that year. And then Halloween, which kind of gets the more of the credit, doesn't come out till 1978. So... yes, you can go back to, like, things like Psycho. You could definitely argue that Psycho is a slasher. But it didn't really, like, set any trails that followed, Like, there wasn't any... That was in, like, the 50s, and this is now 74, when the next time we kind of see someone trying to do something like that. Once again, I'm not a historian. I'm sure there are, like, 10 movies that some historian who might someday stumble on this video go, well, actually, in 1972, this movie... I'm sorry, I don't know about that movie. But please let me know in the comments if that movie exists, because I would love to know about it. I would love to be educated. But yeah.
Well, there is some gore in King Lear, and a harbinger that nobody listens to. So there's that. But I don't know if that counts as a slasher. He just kind of pokes his eyes.
Fair. But yeah, so there is a harbinger here who warns Franklin. Then we're back in the van, baby!
And back in the van.
Yeah. And the characters catch a whiff of a bad smell. Because it's the old slaughterhouse. Which is kind of important, I guess, to this next couple scenes. Like, at least... I guess it's... Once again, it is kind of... This is setting up the possibly underlying, like, extra theme that Tobe Hooper threw in there of, like, kind of being anti the meat industry, which you could definitely look at as kind of our Sawyer family we meet later, who don't have a name in this movie, but in this sequel they're named the Sawyer family, so I will call them that because I know that exists. But our Sawyer family are kind of, representations of the meat industry with, like, kind of, like, there's an element of that you could definitely see there. So we get our discussion of the slaughterhouse, which we start with Franklin. He's telling the story about how cows are slaughtered and, like, how back in the day they used a sledgehammer, but now they have this more efficient way of using a gun with, like, an air gun where it, like, shoots a bolt and retracts it after it kills him real quick. which will be important in the next scene. Remember, that's how cows are slaughtered now, and not how they used to be. Because now they see a hitchhiker and go, oh, that's hot, we should probably pick the guy up. Which, you know, good on them, I guess. They're good people, but also...
Wise.
Yeah. Maybe don't ever pick up hitchhikers.
Never pitch them up either.
Never pitch them up
Don't
either.
pitch him up by the hick. Yeah.
But yeah. They pick up the hitchhiker. They get him in the car, and real quick about the hitchhiker, he is played by Edwin Neal, who based his character on his special needs nephew, because he was reading the script. Is like, you're basically describing the way my nephew acts. So I believe his nephew had like schizophrenia, and so he was kind of like, he based some of his mannerisms off of his nephew.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is he in anything else prominent? Do you know?
Not a lot. I mean, not that I can.
familiar.
It's not like the horror world. I mean, like I tried to look, and like I'm sure he's done stuff. I'm sure there's big Edwin Neal fans. Like, I don't want to say he's done nothing, but
The Edwin Neal
nothing that
community will be
stood out
outraged.
to me personally. But I do really like his work in this movie. It is very eccentric and weird, and that's might rub some people the wrong way, and that's fair. But I enjoyed his portrayal of the hitchhiker. So I wish he did do more, but he kind of really didn't do a lot more, especially in at least in the horror genre, which was what I was mostly looking for when I was like looking through his IMDb, because, you know, if I saw some other horror movies and I'd be like, oh cool, we got to cover that at some point. So yeah, the hitchhiker kind of talking about the slaughtering of cows comes back up in the conversation. The hitchhiker, he does not like the new way it works. He doesn't like the new way of killing. He liked the old way was better.
Because of jobs?
Yeah, because of jobs. It gave more people jobs, like his family, who all used to work at this meat plant, which is in this movie just like a line here, but in other movies is like very, in like the reboot, it's like very central to the characters, like, even though the hitchhiker character is not in the reboot, but they the being connected to the meat industry is kind of a thing that goes throughout most of the movies, I believe. Could be wrong. I haven't seen anything but the first two, and have watched videos on a lot of the other ones. But yeah. He does not like the new way of killing. And, you know, he's really kind of weird about it. Everyone in the car is kind of freaked out about him, the way he's talking with glee about the old way of killing and how it was better. Even like Franklin's kind of trying to like, no, the new way is, you know, it's more efficient, and he's just like, no, it's better the old way. It's like, okay, all right, you like smashing things' heads in, all right, we get it.
Yeah.
Which I think there is definitely also a commentary there to be made, kind of about this family, like, not that it justifies it, but maybe these people used to be able to not have to kill people because they were able to get their anger and aggression out by killing animals, which I'm not saying that's right, but there is maybe an element of maybe that's why they started killing, because it's kind of like, from my understanding, once again, I haven't seen the movie, but kind of like the concept behind the purge of, we as a society need to be able to kill things, so one day a year they get to. So maybe this character, at the very least, because he's not all there, likes killing, and now that he can't do it for his job, he now has to do it this way. Or he always was also killing people. That's just me speculating. They don't tell you when they started killing. But yeah.
Well, I mean, it's implied that Grandpa has also been killing since way back in his day, so...
But he was also killing with a hammer, which you could also imply is kind of... Was he just killing cows back in the day?
Yeah, he was definitely killing cows, but he also... The cook guy does imply, like...
That's true. He was always the best.
A man
Right.
may have slipped
So
in.
I guess they've always been killers. They're always bad.
He's killed more than the rest of us combined.
Yeah.
Oh, with just one hit. You won't feel a thing.
I love.
That was a lie.
Oh, I love the kitchen. I love that whole sequence. But we'll get to that much later in the movie. We have to get to that part of the movie before we can really dive into the dinner scene. But yeah, the hitchhiker, he doesn't like killing, the new way of killing. He loves killing. But yeah.
Boy, does he.
He then after that kind of talks about how also the old way, apparently, I don't understand why it would have changed, because But the old way, is also better because it didn't leave any waste, and they were able to use the head for head cheese. And he kind of gives them a description of what head cheese is, and it freaks out everyone in the car because head cheese is really gross when you know what it is. And I'm not even gonna want to get it. It's like basically brains, and like it's gross. It does not sound appetizing when it's described, especially in this movie.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Sure isn't.
The hitchhiker then steals Franklin's knife and proceeds to, cut his hand, as you do.
With a knife that you were given.
Yeah. Well, not even given. He
Very
kind of just
rude.
takes it from him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
But yeah, he then... wait, did I skip something? I did. Where is that part? Okay, no, sorry. He then, after cutting his own hand with that knife, he then takes out his knife and just kind of shows it to them and be like, hey, look at my knife, it's cool. Which, his knife is actually just like a straight razor, but he refers to it as a knife a bunch, which I guess, yes, it is technically a knife, but it's more like it's a shaving razor.
I mean, it's definitely a knife. It will definitely cut very easily.
I mean, sure. But yeah, he then also pulls out a camera, because he has a camera, and... first he asked them to take him to his house, and asked them to, stay for dinner, which, is a little bit of foreshadowing, They will be staying for dinner.
They did resist doing the "we'll have you over for dinner" line.
They did. They hadn't come up with that line yet. That line, wasn't written until 1975. But
That's
yeah.
the etymology.
Yeah, after he asked them to dinner, they all immediately go, no, we're good. We're busy. We don't have time to... Honestly, they even were kind of saying they don't have time to take him to his house that he said was on the way, which means, like, where are they taking him to? Once again, they never did that, the classic hitchhiker question, like, oh, where to? They don't ask him where he's going. They just go, all right, get in the car. And then when he says, hey, can you take me here? They're like, no. And it's like, well, why are you picking up hitchhikers if you're not willing to even mildly accommodate them? It's like, why are you doing... You didn't have to do this. This was your choice, people. You chose to pick up this poor hitchhiker. Well, not poor hitchhiker. He is a monster.
Yeah.
He is, yes.
But yeah, after they say no to that, he then pulls out his camera and takes a picture of Franklin and then tries to sell it to him because it's a good picture. But Franklin does not want to buy this picture that's being forced upon him. So the hitchhiker does what you do when someone doesn't want to buy your picture. You pull out your tin foil from your bag, you place the picture down, you pour gunpowder on it, and you light that thing on fire in the back of a moving van.
Yeah. The natural
He's got like a kid.
Yes,
so that's the natural progression when you're denied money for the picture you took of somebody.
Yeah.
You light it on fire.
Yeah.
Or as Franklin says, you blow it up.
Not exactly the Sting. Not a well thought out con.
Yeah.
No.
And then, he's also still very angry about this. It's not enough just to light it on fire. He takes his knife and he cuts Franklin's arm. And
Sure does.
That's obviously enough for the crew. They're like, all right, you've lit a fire in our car. You cut yourself and Franklin? All right, you have to get out now. So
you have got to go,
Yeah.
buddy. Enough's enough.
You cutting your own hand wasn't enough. You lighting the picture on fire. And it might have been enough. He kind of did these back to back, so maybe that would have been enough. But once he cuts Franklin, they immediately pull over and push him out of the car. And he then starts kicking the van, and he marks it with his blood while blowing raspberries at the van as they drive away. He really likes raspberries. This movie really likes raspberries, because as we mentioned, Franklin does it too later. But the hitchhiker, this is one of two scenes where he blows raspberries. There's also a really whimsical song playing in the background of that whole van scene, which is really kind of this weird juxtaposition of like this crazy and horror elements that you're seeing of this guy like torturing these people basically in their own van, and this like really jolly radio music playing, and you're like, all right.
Just Joe. Yeah.
Yeah. I almost forgot about the Jolly Radio
I
music.
brought it up for you.
Thanks.
Chris, when we were
It
watching
does add like an extra element of eeriness in that juxtaposition. I like it a lot.
I agree. Now we head back to the van, and Kirk says he's about half ready to call a cop. Which I thought was a weird thing to say. This guy just committed, like, arson and assault, and you're like, I'm almost ready to call the cops on him.
He's got to see
Almost.
him commit, premeditated murder before he's willing to call a cop. He
Gotta
really
build a
doesn't like cops.
I mean, apparently, Kirk hates cops, because he's only half ready after all they've seen so far. Half ready. Not, I'm going to call the cops. We should call the cops when we get to a phone, because, hey, this is pre-cell phones. Like, when we get to a phone, we need to call the cops on him. No, it's, I'm about half ready. Let's see what else this guy does. I might call the cops on him.
Who knows?
Maybe, probably not. And while he's saying that, Sally is patching up Franklin. Then Pam reads Franklin and Sally's horoscopes to them. And they're both very ominously bad. Like, they're very like, ooh, not good.
Very much a foreshadowing.
Yes. I don't remember exactly what each of their horoscopes say, but it's not good, is the takeaway. They're both, but neither of them really believe it, because, they don't...
I think Franklin's horoscope is literally like what just happened in the van. It was like, you will meet an ominous person and bad things will happen. I was like, well, that's a little bit on the nose. But all right.
They ate in a dollar store, man. Like,
But hey, when it comes to horoscopes, I actually kind of respect that one because it wasn't super vague for once. So many other horoscopes are so vague they apply to everyone. Even if it's
but if
not...
it was, a really well-written movie, they would have just had some vague thing.
yeah.
Yeah, it actually took me out of the movie. I was like, that's not what a horoscope would sound like. It would say, you are a proud person who will do proud...
You will come to a fork in the road.
And you will make a decision.
You today.
But also, apparently Mercury is in retrograde, so that's bad or something.
Yeah. No, Saturn is in retrograde. And Saturn is a planet of maliciousness. It's a malefic planet.
Yeah. Maleficent.
Did you know
or
that
something.
Saturn is evil?
Uh-huh.
That's unfortunate, because Saturn's really cool. It's got a ring on it.
All the cool people are bad.
An evil ring. Yeah.
It's a evil ring. It's got the ring of Sauron.
Yeah.
Hell has 7 rings, and it has 1. Sounds like it's almost hell.
It's more.
Then after that, the crew stops at W.E. Slaughter, which is a barbecue/gas station. This scene specifically...
We slaughter.
Yeah, we slaughter.
Yep.
Yeah, it is shot. This scene specifically, the whole movie is shot in Texas, mostly like in the Austin area, because it like most of them were like students at UT. Like
really,
everyone in this movie is like a student at UT. Excuse me. The specifically the gas station is in Bastrop, Texas, and it is still there. It's titled The Gas Station. And they do, like, horror events there quite frequently. Like, they'll have, like, a random horror person come in for free, and, like, people can meet them. Like, so, just, I guess, quick little shout-out to them. I don't know if they're actually good people or anything like that. I've never been. But, hey, they're trying to be nice to the horror community, so that's cool. I'll give them a shout-out on the podcast that no one listens to. And by no one, I mean a very small amount who, if they cared, already know that this exists. But, yeah, if you're ever in Bastrop, Texas... head on down to the gas station.
Not a gas station, the gas station.
I believe it is titled, I believe the name of the place is The Gas Station.
Do they have barbecue? Do you know?
I would assume they have to. Like, I would assume at this point they have to at least, like, even if they don't make it, they buy some barbecue or something. Like, they at least have some good jerky or something.
Hit up the local Rudy's.
Yeah. But yeah. Then at this gas station, we meet, I believe in the credits, he's only referred to as the old man. he's only ever referred to in the movie as the cook, and then in the next movie he gets the name Drayton Sawyer. So, but in this movie he is just the cook / in the credits the old man. And he is played by Jim Sedow, who I mentioned earlier. I really like Jim Sedow's portrayal. He does a really good job of kind of playing a very normal, straight-laced guy kind of here this first time we see him, compared to, like, the depravity we see from him later. I think he did a really good job playing the two parts of it. It'd be really easy to... Like, I also really liked, Edwin Neal's performance, but he didn't have to show any range, really. Like, I think he did a great job as Crazy Man, but all he had to do was Crazy Man. While Jim Sedow had to go, hey, I'm supposed to just kind of feel like a normal guy that maybe you don't fully trust because you don't know him, but not you think he's evil. Spoiler, at this, he is evil. But yeah. Credit to Jim Sedow. And he encourages them to wait around till the gas refill comes because there's no gas, which you would think is maybe some slight lazy writing that, like, oh, great, the gas station doesn't have gas, so they have to stay around and can't get where they need to go. But actually is very accurate to the time. There was, like, a gas shortage in the early 70s. So, like,
yeah,
there is a reason this is here. It's not just... a lot of other movies, this would have been written there just to cause an issue. While this movie, they use a real-life problem to write an issue into their movie to make it feel more real, especially at the time for people. People are like, oh, I've been to the gas station, they don't have gas. Like, gas stations would have, like, signs that would say, like, we don't have gas. And, like, it was a very big thing at the time. So, yeah, I credit to the movie for incorporating that into their story in a way that both, shows the, questionable, sinister nature of, Drayton / the cook / the old man. And also, is real. And while I believe the girls are, like, inside shopping, because, that's what girls be doing, you know what I'm saying, guys? The girls be shopping.
Yeah.
The men, they stay in the car like they're supposed to. And in the van, Franklin is knifing up the side of the van for fun, until Kirk goes, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, sorry."
I just started doing it, wasn't really think about it then.
Yeah.
As you do.
Which is, maybe people don't treat him bad because he's in a wheelchair. They treat him bad because he's a weirdo who stabs the wall.
And that would be fair.
Yeah.
We do have reason to worry about Frank.
Yeah. And he kind of...
The raspberries.
Yes, he does show signs of being a serial killer. Blowing raspberries at the air.
Number one sign.
Yeah. Thought you could tell.
It's like killing small animals and blowing raspberries are the signs of becoming a serial killer someday.
That's it.
And the way he's stabbing that van, he's killed a cat. I believe it.
Absolutely. At least a squirrel.
Yeah. Franklin then gets like really interested in how the hitchhiker's blood being on his knife, and kind of like talking about how impressed he is that he was able to just cut himself. Like just a tad too interested in this. Like how could you do it? Like I don't know if I have it in me. As he's like holding the knife next to his hand, and he's like, "Hey, Kirk, could you do it?" And Kirk's like, "No."
You know what? The more we talk about Franklin, the more I realize, maybe he is a little bit weird.
That's the thing is,
it's not because he's in a wheelchair.
There are parts of the Franklin character where it does feel like the other characters are attacking him specifically because he's in a wheelchair, and like I guess they hate cripples, while he as a character is also kind of insufferable. Like, he is sympathetic because he's treated badly and no one seems to care about his, like, being in a wheelchair and, like, being at a house later that he can't do anything in, and they don't even try to help him get in. Like, there's a lot of reasons where you go, oh, man, poor him. But then he's, like, blowing raspberries at this guy and talking about cutting himself with a knife because he thinks it's cool. And you're like, all right, maybe he is a little weird. Maybe that's why they don't want to talk to him. But yeah, Franklin is a freak.
The takeaway?
Yeah. that's my takeaway for the whole movie. We'll see you next week.
All right, guys. Good.
Then on the way back after that, while they're back in the van, they're heading to the house. Kirk says if they run out of gas, Franklin has to tow them back on his wheelchair. Because just in case you think, hey, the scene before, you're like, oh, maybe this Franklin guy kind of sucks. The rest of the characters immediately go, you suck because you're in a wheelchair, we hate you. And you're like, all right, cool. Like, why are we dogging on the poor guy for being in the wheelchair? Why is that the only thing these people want to crap on him for? Like, there's reasons to not like Franklin. The poor guy being in a wheelchair is not his fault. Stop using that as your point of anger. You guys are also bad, everyone else in the movie. Except for Sally. Sally's okay. She's just an irritated sister, which, if you had Franklin as a brother, you'd probably be an irritated sister as well. He cuts up the van for no reason. But yeah. After that, they the crew shows up at the Franklin and Sally's family house that Franklin refers to as the old Franklin house, which once again really throws into questions on what his family name is. Is Sally adopted? Is that why she has a different... Well, I don't know. Is she a stepsister? I don't know.
Maybe Franklin's not even Franklin's actual name. Maybe that's just the name he goes by.
He goes by his last name.
Yeah.
I don't know. It baffles.
It's not made clear.
Here's the thing. It wouldn't matter if they didn't throw in that one random line about the old Franklin house. And I'm like...
Yeah, they could have just had any other
name. What?
Yeah.
It's like it's from a different draft of the script where they their name was going to be Franklin, and they're like, I don't know about that. We'll keep the name Franklin for him, but we'll get rid of the Franklin house name. Franklin is the family name, but they forgot to take it out of this scene, and they just shot it, and they were, like, crap. We could reshoot it, but like, is anyone going to?
He delivered it so well.
No one will notice the flub.
No, knock that line out of the park.
And joke's on them. 50 years later, roughly, we came in and said, hey, what if we crap on that mistake? Take that, cinematic genius Toby Hooper. You made a mistake, and we saw it.
We got you right where we want you.
You could probably title our podcast something...
The Franklin House.
The Franklin House?
Oh,
the Franklin House boys?
Okay.
The Franklin House, we got you, Tony Hooper.
Toby Hooper.
That's what I said.
I sounded like I said Tony, I'm sorry.
I would never.
I don't know. People make mistakes. Like Toby Hooper when he wrote the
Franklin
script.
Toby Hooper, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Understand.
So they're at the Franklin house. And in the house, Sally mentions that her granddad died. Jerry then asks her what happened, which apparently is the funniest thing ever to Sally.
Hilarious.
Like,
to my granddad?
As she what?
And she starts laughing hysterically,
Like,
and then
I guess
Jerry starts laughing hysterically. He's like, yeah,
my dad. He must have just been old or something. I don't know why he'd even be stupid enough to ask. I mean, like, that's such a weird reaction when someone asks, like, oh, what happened to your grandpa? My grandpa? It's like, yeah, you just said he
There's
died.
like no gravity at all.
It was like the only scene direction that the actors had was like, you're laughing and having a good time. Also, you're talking about your dead granddad.
Got it.
Like, oh, so we're laughing and having a good time while we talk about my dead granddad? All right, got it.
Yeah.
Laugh hysterically the whole time.
While this conversation is happening, Franklin is currently cleaning the blood off the van because it's been, marked by the hitchhiker. And then Kirk is on his own, away from them, because at the end of that laughing scene, Pam walks in, and then we cut to Kirk, who's all alone, who he finds the spider room upstairs. It's a room with a bunch of spiders. It never comes into play, other than to be creepy.
Correction. It is a room with a bunch of daddy long legs, which are not spiders at all.
They're not spiders?
Nope. They're closer to crustaceans than they are to spiders.
We always call them the bouncy spiders because they, in big groups.
For our audio listeners, Isaiah bounced up and down.
For our audio
Yeah.
listeners, I made a face of like, oh, didn't know that.
I mean,
Yeah, no.
now you know what my family calls it.
I called them spiders.
house.
It's called the.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to call it the spider room in my notes because I think that's funnier than the daddy long leg room. But that's just me. But the point is, I don't know why this scene is here, other than to, I guess, continue to show that the house is in like a stage of like bad like care, but also
It's like uninhabitable.
I don't
Yeah.
know why we even like this house doesn't even really matter in the plot other than to get them there. So I don't know why we're so harping on why the house is so bad because after like the next scene, we never see the house again. We just leave it. But also, they don't
Yeah.
really like. No one really
Yeah.
even seems to be reacting to how in bad repair the house is. They're just kind of like reminiscing on like Sally's just like, oh, my childhood room and my dead grandpa. Ha 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 ha. But like, not man. This house looks like crap. We're gonna stay here. Like, no one reacts like that. The closest is Kirk, who like looks at the spiders and goes, oh, and leaves the room.
Yeah, it is weird that. I guess if you want to be generous, you could assume this wasn't the last leg of the journey. Like, oh, we're going to stop here and swim for a little bit. Now that we've determined that the grave is, not messed with. But yeah, it did occur to me, like, what were they planning on doing? I mean, how is this trip going to
Like,
be?
there could have been like a line where they go, oh crap, maybe we can't stay here. Like, they didn't
Anything
realize
like
how
that, yeah.
how bad it had gotten. But like, no, they're just like, oh yeah, we're gonna be here. Yeah, it's a cool spider room. That's where we'll carry Franklin upstairs and put him in the spider room because he's in a wheelchair and he can't get out.
That's what he deserves. Yeah.
He'll be stuck with them. But yeah, after that, we cut downstairs to the poor Franklin just trying to get like up the like into the house. Like he's outside on the porch and he's like
Onto the patio.
yeah, just struggling to get on the patio. Like no one's there to help the poor guy in a wheelchair. I mean, don't get me wrong, we've established he's not a fun guy to be around. But once again, it's not his fault that he's in a wheelchair. Help the guy get in the house.
Yeah, he has
Like, immediately darted up the stairs.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go where he can't go so he can't find us.
Like,
he also has like a sausage in his mouth the whole time.
like a cigar.
Yeah, which,
Yeah.
due to the implications of these characters, he might have a human meat in his mouth. Like, there is definitely an element of, like, that's, I believe, implied, at least maybe in one of the later movies and stuff, that they do, at their barbecue place, they do, like, serve human meat without, like, people's knowledge. So
There are some suspicious zooms.
Sally definitely reacts to the meat like something's wrong with it, even though it looked like meat in the scene where she does here a while down the road here. But
Yeah.
That's true.
so he may have just a hunk of human sticking in his mouth for some reason. That I guess
Good old human sausage.
Yeah, some good old human sausage that he never chews on. He just holds in his mouth like a stogie.
Yeah.
Like an old-timey editor.
Yeah.
Just wants pictures of Spider-Man.
Takes it out of his mouth and blows some raspberries.
Can't blow any smoke, so he blows raspberries.
Yeah. Same concept as a bubble pipe.
You guys can't hear it because of Discord, but I'm blowing raspberries. The audience should be able to hear it because my mic will pick it up. But yeah. So he eventually gets in the house after some struggle, and he gets really sad and angry because he can't be with the rest of them who are laughing upstairs because he's stuck downstairs. And
Yeah. The rest of them who are laughing hysterically, by the way.
because they all just met in the room and were like,
Conversation about-
"Did you know her grandpa's dead?
Look at those spiders!
Dead grandpa!" Yeah. So, but poor Franklin can't be part of the fun dead grandpa talk. So he's just stuck downstairs, being real sad and angry, blowing raspberries at this guy, yelling at them like, "Hey, it'll be fun that I came." Once again, I feel bad for the guy. But also, he's kind of insufferable even in this scene with the way he's complaining about it. It's like, oh my gosh, dude, shut up. We get it. Your life sucks. Move on. Just eat your human sausage and be happy.
And he pours his heart and soul into those raspberries.
He does.
Like,
He sure
all
does.
his lungs, his diaphragm. Yeah.
He really goes for it.
Because he is a serial killer. This is the sign for sure.
Good. Yeah.
Then Pam and Kirk come down the stairs and ask him about the swimming hole. And Franklin, wait, what? Swimming hole. And then he tells them where it is. They head out. Then Franklin, alone again, because no one cares about him, he kind of just goes to the door and he finds some bones sitting on the ground, as well as some hanging bone art above him. Which I think the implication is that, like, because their car was marked when the hitchhiker brought this here, I think, like, after they got inside or something, I'm not sure. And maybe it's just always been there. Maybe Grandpa was also into weird bone art. Maybe that's just part of the culture.
Yeah. I mean, the Sawyer house is fairly close.
Yeah.
It's just, like, across the pond, or across the lake. So it's not, like, a far stretch to say that, you know, hitchhiker walked across the pond and saw this house and was like, yeah, I'll put some bone art up.
Yeah, no, I have no problem with bone art being there. I'm just saying that we don't know why it's there. They never, like, say why it's there, and that's fine.
Or it's marked.
Yeah, it's marked.
Yeah.
Because also, I think this is the same door Franklin had just come in, so at the very least, the bones on the ground are new. Maybe they all missed the bone art, but I think he would have realized when he rolled over bones. So, at the very least, the bones on the ground are new bones. Is that important? Probably not, but that's where my brain goes, like, how did these bones get here? Tell me how the bones got here. Movie? How did the bones get there?
Where are the bones?
Whose bones are they? We never know. Pam and Kirk first head over to where the swimming hole used to be, and because it's dried out now, at least that's their. I guess that's the swimming hole. I mean, that's at least what they think, but also we don't know if they just went the wrong way or something. Maybe that's just a hill or a valley, I guess technically. But yeah, they kind of trip down and
give the most detailed directions. Yeah.
They trip down, and then they, of course, what would you think a character in this movie would do that we've met so far? That's right, make a poor joke about Franklin in his wheelchair. How did they get Franklin down here? Because he's a fat loser in a wheelchair. And Pam is like, well, he might have not always been fat. And you're like, oh, maybe that's why.
And then Kirk remarks with, you talking about Franklin? He's always been a
piece of crap,
a fatty
loser,
a piece of lard. I hate him.
Yeah. So now we're making fun of him because he is crippled and because he's overweight.
How dare that guy not work out when he's crippled?
He is a wall-stabbing fatty. That's how we've always known him. And
he ought to be in the pool every day doing aerobics.
Yeah. Why didn't he crawl himself down to this watering hole back when he was around more often so he wouldn't be so fat?
I'd like to know.
Yeah. That's the real point. The real point of the story is Franklin sucks.
That's the moral of the story.
That's the moral of the story. Nothing else. There is no other takeaways. Forget what we said about maybe the meat industry, maybe a discussion of, like, violence in the world in the 70s.
Yeah.
No. It's about Franklin is a fat, crippled loser. And that's not Austin saying he's crippled. I just feel like that's what the characters would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. This movie's really mean to Franklin. And but also,
for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah,
in every respect.
I hate Franklin. I really do. But also, I feel bad for him. I hate him for different reasons than everyone else seems to do. But yeah, he's a fat loser who can't walk. Ha 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 ha. Just in case, the YouTube algorithm heard that. That was a joke. Please understand that I'm not hating on people in wheelchairs. The movie is.
Yeah.
Oh, it was a joke. We are not bullying people who are disabled.
No.
Yeah. Don't shoot the messenger.
I'm only bullying weirdos who stab the wall. That's what I'll bully him for. Because that's weird and wrong.
and deserving of bullying.
Yeah.
One could argue.
Then Pam and Kirk, they kind of walk up to the Sawyer. They kind of see the Sawyer house off in the distance, and they kind of go, "Oh, what's that?" I walk past the bone tree. Everyone has a good bone. Oh no, it's a can tree. What was it? What's hanging from the tree? Is it bones or is it cans? I think it's cans.
It's a can.
It's a can.
There are
tree.
cans.
Among
Yeah.
other things. I think there's also like a clock that's been somehow poked through a branch.
As you do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another destroyed clock, 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a fact. That is a fun fact about the Horror Boys podcast. We only talk about movies with broken clocks. Going forward.
How about that?
It's not thematic. We just like them.
Yeah. Even if they're not there, I'm going to edit a version of the movie where I put in a clock being broken before I send it to the boys so they can see it.
Yeah.
Because it's really important that broken clocks are in every movie.
Yeah.
Because you know the thing about broken clocks? They're right. Twice a day.
You could not be more right. I mean, except for this one, which I don't think that it has even hands on it.
Oh,
It's
yeah, and that one's wrong all the time.
pretty big exit wound. Yeah, it cannot be right. But yeah, I think it's just cans and the clock, and that's what they zoom in on.
Okay. Then they walk
Yeah.
past that, and they hear a generator going. So they walk over towards this house because, oh, hey, they have a generator. Maybe they'll let us borrow some gas. Because that's what you
70s
do.
were a different time.
No,
Just walk
I'd
up to
argue
a
that...
stranger's house and go, "You got some gas?"
No, I think it's more so these characters are stupid, honestly.
They
I
are
don't think this is
meant
even
to be
acceptable at the time.
Incredibly naive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe to like knock on your neighbor's door or whatever, but they like knock and peer in the windows and look over the fence and like point and look and then just barge into the house.
Oh, the door's open. Guess I should go in.
We got a couple seconds before we get to them doing the break and entering. It's coming.
Yeah.
Most of these characters might have deserved what they got.
It wasn't so much a breaking and entering as it was a opening and entering. But I get
That's fair.
for the intents and purposes of the name of the crime, he definitely did enter somebody's house without their permission.
Yeah.
Now, does he, pay with a little bit more than a few hours in jail? Maybe.
Here's the thing, though. It's Texas.
Oh, you're right. He got on his properties, which
got on
means he
his
no longer
property.
has right to
He
his own
actually probably, honestly,
Would have just got shot.
No, I'm saying I don't know. He definitely could have died and not even probably been like tried. People are like, oh, well, they were on their property. That's
What's funny is that, like,
off the land.
the cook warns them of this exact thing, which is interesting. The cook doesn't even like reel him in. He tells him, hey, maybe don't check out that old place. He like advises them against it. And I can't remember how his line goes, but he tells me, like some people out here, don't like strangers going to their private property and they don't mind telling you about it. And they're like, well, that's actually our plan, buddy. We're going to go do just that and open their door. And it's his.
Yeah. There are some old cars in front of the house, implying that maybe they've, the events that are about to happen in this movie may have happened before as
A few times
Before.
Ooh.
Yeah.
These might be serial killers, not just murderers. Ooh.
They don't like cereal?
They don't
That's
like cereal. They
unfortunate.
hate it. But also, it's
Don't
the
know.
70s. What cereal was there? Like Bran Flakes? Who would like
Yeah,
cereal
I wouldn't
then?
like cereal back in the 70s either.
This is way before the 80s commercialism where we got like all the theme cereal.
All the
Count Chocula.
Yeah.
all the cereal coated in
I actually
sugar.
think Count Chocula has been around since like the 60s. But ignore that for the sake of this
Don't
own
listen to
discussion.
me.
But yeah, okay. It wasn't. I wrote it down here. So it's not a tree of cans. It is a tree of mugs with a broken claw. It is because I have written
Enamel mugs.
It is
Yes.
mugs. It was mugs that were on the tree. My bad. I wrote it
Enamel
kind of out of
mug and
order
a
of where
broken
it
claw.
happened because I was like, I guess I'll mention the tree like a little bit later. So my bad. Sorry, everyone. They also. I read that. After they head up to the door and no one answers, Kirk finds a tooth, and he's like, I know what I'll do. I'll scare my girlfriend with this tooth.
Human tooth.
This human
Yeah.
tooth I found. And
He's got a great sense of humor.
weirdly enough, she didn't like it. What
Crazy.
a prude.
Yeah, she's not a 2022 kind of gal.
She was not a
Like,
good sport about the human tooth.
You tried to make that joke when we were watching the movie, but then you couldn't actually find proof of this existing. So I don't know what you're talking about. This girls collecting teeth now.
I know plenty of girls in my life that collect teeth.
You need
I'm
different...
not saying it's weird, because it is weird. But I am saying that more girls from today's era, if somebody threw a tooth at them, they'd probably go, "Oh, cool tooth."
Never known this phenomenon, I
hear me
gotta say.
out. Chris, you have weird friends.
You gotta hang out with more alt girls, guys.
Then after he scares her away, she heads over to this swing that's this porch, like the swing that's over like a little bit away from the house. After he scares her, she's like done with him because he just put a human tooth in her hand without any like forewarning. He's just like, "Hey, look, tooth." What? Then of course he does what every good person does. He goes, "I wonder if I can open this door." He kind of like just pushes the door open and goes, "Ah, cool. I guess I'll come in." Well, first he goes, "Hey, anyone here?" No answer. So what do? You then barge in when you don't get an answer. They need to answer me. I need gas, and I am privileged.
And upon entering, he hears a pig squealing.
He does. And after he hears the pig squeal, he walks past the beautiful set design. I have it written down a little bit late. Let me try to find it. The art director, Robert A. Burns, is the set director and like the art director who did all the bone art and all the stuff we see. Huge credit to him. This movie has so much atmosphere. I love the visuals that we see in this house and whatnot. It is gross and creepy and amazing.
And it doesn't look thrown together. Yeah, it looks like well composed.
Yes. It feels like this is a lived-in house for these kind of characters they're portraying. Like, and it's great. It's creepy, and he walks to the skull room, as everyone has, That's the
iconic red-walled skull room.
And a bunch of animal skulls. I gotta make sure it's clear. It is animal skulls in this room. When I say skull room in this kind of house, you might think there's some other skulls there. But no, this is all animal skulls in this one. Mostly like deers and horned animals, or antlered animals. But, yeah. He walks in there, hearing those pig noises, which we find out in a second it's from Leatherface. Because Leatherface pops out. Actually, first he slips. He slips on this little like ramp there, and starts to fall. And Leatherface just clocks him as he's falling, and he just starts twitching. Which I believe, and I was listening to an interview that's Toby Hooper did that because if like the way like if a hammer hits someone's skull, it like could cause their nerve hit like their brain in a way that would actually do that. I don't know if that's true, but that's what he said in this like interview, and that's why he did this for the character. So he gets knocked down and is twitching a bunch. So Leatherface, hits him again, which also is kind of foreshadowed earlier with the talk of the cows. How sometimes the first hit wouldn't be enough; you'd have to hit him again. So he hits him again. And stops him, and then he yanks him in and slams the sliding metal door shut in one of, like, the most iconic shots in all of horror. Yeah, I love this shot. Yeah, that's really all I have to say is I love it. It's so strikingly beautiful as he, like, slams that door. Like, it's just, like, you're like, oh, wow, cool.
It's so final.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, Leatherface is played by Gunnar Hansen, I believe is his name. That's how it's pronounced. Yeah. I don't believe he's done much else, but he played Leatherface in this, and I like to give credit to the guys under the masks. We gave a lot of love to. I mean, I started it with Kane Hodder. I'm disappointed in myself for those first like 6 episodes not giving credit to those guys as much. My bad. Sorry if you're a long-time listener. I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to learn more and, give more credit to people who deserve it. Like the cinematographers and the art directors. I'm trying to, do a better job and make this show better. I hope it's noticed. Then, Pam goes, crap, where's my guy? So she gets up and she starts to head towards the house. And we get once again, this like whole like next like scene to like 3 or 4 scenes together are some of like some very iconic shots, because we get this iconic low angle tracking shot of her butt, which sure is just kind of exploitative for the sake of exploitation, sure, but it's also like really beautifully shot by Daniel Pearl. Like, it is framed perfectly, which is a weird thing to talk about when we're talking about a shot of a chick's butt. But I also do want to give it credit in this movie, because in this movie, it's cool. Enough. It's cool enough, and it looks really pretty and all that. They were, once again, like the flashbulb noise, from my understanding, they are going to try to recreate this shot a couple times throughout the series, and it's never as good. Because, why not? Why do things well after you did it once? You can't do it. Just redo it again, but don't do it as good. It's the classic, Nightmare on Elm Street remake mantra of, let's do the same thing again, but worse.
You understand.
We'll see.
Yeah, so Pam then goes inside looking for Kirk, and she stumbles into the living room, which is covered in...
Ironic.
Yeah. And it's covered in feathers and chicken bones and all this, like...
Other bones?
Yeah, and this is a scene that goes on for like a minute or so.
Yeah.
I'm just going to describe it as just like she walks into the bone room. She sees the bone couch. There's also a bunch of other like human body part stuff throughout the house. Like there's a lamp, I think.
Lots of remains.
Yeah, and just random bones and stuff. It's a really creepy scene that once again just really gives like atmosphere of being like, what the crap room did she just walk into?
Seriously, and the side of the bone couch is like actually chilling.
Mm-hmm.
I think of other examples of similar stuff in other movies, like once again the Blair Witch Project with the bundle of like finger bones or whatever. I've just never seen that same effect with set pieces or props and things like that in other horror movies with bones. I don't know why it is, but this one doesn't seem thrown together. This just seems very well composed.
Yeah. This is in my notes where I had to credit the art director Robert A. Burns. But, credit him again. He deserves it. He deserves 2 references. Most people only get 1. Maybe the director will say his name a couple times throughout, but normally we don't, bring up we're not going to typically bring up the cinematographer's name twice. But I'll give Robert Burns, that's 3. He just got the name said 3 times. No more. I will not say his name again. I will not do it.
Or he'll appear in front of you.
Here I'm going to take a little break from the plot here to have a very brief, but just kind of discussion about Ed Gein, because I think it's very important in this scene, and kind of just the general plot of this movie. So Ed Gein was, I believe, he's not a serial killer technically. He was a multiple murderer because he only killed 2 people, but you got to make
grave robber, right?
Yeah, he was mostly a grave robber first. So he was lived in somewhere in the Midwest. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head where it was. Plainfield something. I don't remember what state.
I believe it was Wisconsin.
Serious. See, I was thinking it was either Wisconsin or Michigan, and I couldn't remember which one. We'll go with Plainfield, Wisconsin, and if we're wrong, we're sorry. This is not a true crime podcast, so I don't even have to bring up Ed Gein, but I kind of want to because it's really kind of, I feel like, important with part of like the inspiration for what this movie is, which Ed Gein was a man who, after his mom died, kept her in his, closed her in her room and locked the room and never went in, and which you might go, hey, that doesn't sound quite like, this movie. Might sound like a different movie. That's right. Psycho was also heavily inspired by the Ed Gein murders. But what specifically makes this movie more connected to Ed Gein was also known for grave robbing at the beginning, where he would take body parts and repurpose them into furniture and whatnot. I believe he had a skin lamp and maybe a couch as well. He also I believe had a belt of nipples.
Yeah.
So which, yes, he didn't. I don't believe he ever made face masks out of people's skin, but he did use skin for clothing and furniture. You can see the inspiration there. He then went on after grave robbing, because he was a sick freak who, obviously, went on to also, I believe, kill 2 women afterwards, because he, I guess, needed more thrill of evil. Just grave robbing wasn't enough for him anymore. But, technically 2 murders is not a serial killer. He's only a multiple murderer, I believe is the term. But, yeah. Thought I'd bring it up here. We'll probably, whenever we get around to covering Psycho, I'm sure I'll bring up Ed Gein again, because it's also relevant to that story as well. But, yeah, there's our brief discussion on Ed Gein is a horrible person who existed at one point that kind of inspired this movie. loosely. Like, it's not a one-for-one, obviously, but there are definitely inspirations here.
Yeah.
Now, back to the scene where Pam is lying on the ground around the feathers, and she starts to cough and dry heave in, like, fear and disgust from what she's seeing, before trying to escape. Before Leatherface grabs her in the door and pulls her back in another iconic, beautiful shot as she, like, runs out the door and he pulls her in. I think her shoes fall off as he pulls her in. Like, it is beautiful. They're, like, these 3 scenes kind of back to back of, like, I mean, yes, one of them is literally just her butt, which feels weird to praise, but it is a beautiful shot. Like, it is. Like, there's no way around the fact that it is beautiful. Not her butt. I mean, her butt, she's got an okay butt. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying her butt is beautiful. I'm saying the cinematography in the shot is beautiful. But yeah, just... for the audio listeners, Isaiah is, like, miming someone trying to, like, catch their words and, like,
Explain.
Yeah. But yeah, this whole, like, sequence, though, because we're not done. There's more in this sequence that just also just, like, kind of sets the tone for this movie and just is some of the shots that make this movie so amazing. Because we're now, after he grabs her, he pulls her into the kitchen and he puts her on the meat hook, which is another, like, really iconic moment.
Yes.
Because you're like, oh my gosh, a meat hook.
Because it's centered, like, in the foreground. With him in the background is like it's a great shot.
It is. It's also a shot
Inevitable.
that is commonly misremembered. Kind of with this, kind of a whole theme of this movie is people think of this movie as this, like, grotesque, super violent movie, which it's dark and it's evil. But when it comes to, like, gore and whatnot, it's actually surprisingly tame. Like, there are people who will, like, remember, like, oh yeah, no, there are people who, like, I remember, I think it's Edwin Neal was talking about how sometimes he's won a bunch of bets with people who would be like, you know, yeah, the hook definitely, like, came through her chest and you see it happen, because people's brains just go, like, wanted to, like, connect the dots. What they don't see is actually more intriguing to people. It, like, makes people fill in the dots. You're like, so, like, and then, like, immediately right after this we get this shot of Leatherface revving the chainsaw and chopping up Kirk, which, once again, people thought was way violenter than it is. It's mostly off-screen. But, like, this isn't me... Like, here's the thing. We love to praise cool gore effects and whatnot. We enjoy that. But I'm not saying this as a negative for this movie.
Dude, no, it's effective.
Yeah, this movie doesn't need that gore, but still feels like it's there almost. Like, yeah, if you're watching, you go, oh, there's no gore in this scene, maybe, but you doesn't, like, take you out of it. You're still like, oh, okay, crap, he, like, killed her still. I'm just credit to the movie for being able to be so tame, relatively, for what this is. I mean, I guess for the times, there was less crazy gore. I mean, I know there were other violent movies before this, but yeah, I'm kind of rambling, but I'm going to move on. Just credit to the movie for doing so well with so little visual, like, gore-wise. Like, it's still a very scary scene and very violent scene, even though it technically isn't that violent. Yeah. So, he kills her on the meat hook. And then while she's on the meat hook, she is screaming and, like, having to watch as he chops up Kirk. Which also, I heard someone say, like, kind of adds to the whole, like, damning take on, like, the meat industry of, like, there are lots of times in slaughterhouses where, like, the next cow has to watch the cow before them get slaughtered. It's gross. It sucks. I still love meat. It doesn't make me a vegetarian like Pam is. By the way, she is. That was mentioned, like, one scene before. But yeah. So, yeah, it's a really cool, like, 4 scenes there back to back that are all just amazingly put together, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Then we head back at the house. Where,
the Franklin house.
Yes, the Franklin house. Where Franklin is arguing with Sally about his knife. He's like, where's my knife? Oh, you had it last. Where's my knife? And once again, he's insufferable. Like, yes, it's... ask her nicely, like, hey, what'd you do with my knife? Like, you can do that. But instead, he's just, like, annoying about it. It's like, okay, we get it. She misplaced her knife. That sucks. Okay, but, like, Dude, shut up about it. Go blow raspberries or something, dude. Like, gosh.
Ooh, raspberries.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they can't find his knife. And then it kind of leads from that, though. First Jerry goes out. He's like, hey, Kirk and Pam haven't been back in a while. I'm going to go look for them. So he goes off. And then we get kind of a little heart-to-heart remembering their childhood scene with Franklin and Sally, which is one of the few times Franklin isn't insufferable in the whole movie. Like this one scene where like they kind of having which is kind of funny, which is kind of, I think, a really good depiction of sibling relationships. A minute ago, he was being really annoyed with her and like yelling at her about losing his knife, and then they have a heart-to-heart discussion, which kind of shows the ups and downs of being a sibling. These two characters, Sally is the only person who actually loves Franklin. Everyone else hates him, it seems. Sally does love him. And it's nice to see that at least she's the one character who doesn't completely treat him like garbage.
Yeah.
Then we head back to Jerry, who finds the house, the Sawyer house, and he does what you do, and he goes inside. Doesn't even really knock, just immediately go. To be fair, I do think he sees their blanket that they had taken.
Oh yes, the blanket or towel.
I guess that justifies him going in. He's like, oh, they're obviously here, but he's still.
Yeah.
He doesn't even really announce hey, I'm coming in. He just everyone in this movie
now.
just breaks in, which kind of adds to another take on this movie, which not I guess another take, but really, Leatherface is just stopping a home invasion. He really is. These characters are just breaking into his home, and yeah, sure, he's taking it too far. I'm not saying Leatherface didn't take it too far. But also, we'll get to it a little bit later too as well, but I would argue Leatherface was obviously not all there, as well as is in an abusive family where he knows if he doesn't take these people out, he's going to be abused more than normal. He is he is the most sympathetic monster we have covered so far. I mean, I don't know, maybe not, because there's movies I guess something like The Lighthouse or Hereditary. You could argue that the villains in those movies are some of the people who do bad things in those movies are people who are gone crazy or have dealt with. But when we're talking the iconic horror monsters, the horror villains, you talk your Freddys, your Jasons, we haven't talked about it yet, but Michael Myers, none of those characters are really sympathetic. Yeah, you could say, well, Jason was drowned as a kid. Okay, cool. So now he's a murderer of hundreds of people? How does that justify it? Compared to, not that it ever truly would justify what Leatherface does, but Leatherface is an abusive special needs guy who, not abusive, abused special needs guy who, especially in this movie, is protecting his house from people who were breaking in. He is one of the most sympathetic characters for the monsters who kill people, which is a really weird thing for a movie to do. I guess it was the first one, so I guess the rules weren't as established, but it is weird how, at least in this movie, and from my understanding, at least in the first 4 movies or so, he's always the sympathetic guy who's, his home life, if you will, is horrible, and that's part of why he does what he does. It doesn't justify it, but I think it's kind of cool to see that.
That's a good point.
There's some sympathy to Leatherface is kind of out of control of what he does. Kind of, yes. Obviously, you could not kill people. Yes, I'm not condoning killing people, but I am saying that I think it is cool that Leatherface is still a very sympathetic monster. You still kind of go
yeah,
oh, he's just a poor special needs dude who's treated like crap and knows that if he doesn't kill people, he will be abused more. Which will there's a scene that directly kind of ties into the fact that it would have been worse if he didn't kill these people for him. We'll get to that when we get there. But there is line delivery where you go, oh crap, no, he definitely had that's in quotes for audio listeners, had to do this. I just thought that's a cool, different thing that helps Leatherface stand out from the rest.
That's a good point.
Jerry finds the house and he gets inside where he hears giggling. Once again, I guess it's Leatherface. Leatherface makes a lot of just weird noises, especially in this movie, where you go, what is that? Which, once again, maybe it's just an artistic thing. Maybe he's not actually supposed to be making these noises. I don't know. But I think it's Leatherface giggling is what he hears. And he then sees... Oh, sorry, no, this is while he's still outside. My bad. While he's still outside, he hears the giggling and sees Pam and Kirk's blanket outside. Then he breaks in. And inside he finds Pam in the freezer, which is like this weird scene where like he's hearing her hit at the freezer, but then he opens it and she's like lying in there dead practically before popping out at him.
Sure got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, wasn't she just hitting the... All right, whatever. Okay.
Maybe she was like twitching. I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But she pops... Violently. Yeah, she pops out at him and then like kind of falls back. And she's now dead. Never to be seen again. And then after he sees that, Jerry turns around to Leatherface, who just runs in and just one swing this time hammers him to the ground. Fun fact about this scene, the first take, one of the things a lot of the actors wanted to do was not see Gunnar in the like outfit before the scene, so they could have some like real reactions to when they saw him.
The wedding dress technique. Yeah. The wedding dress technique.
Yes, the wedding dress.
Say yes to the monster.
Yeah. So when Gunnar as Leatherface first ran into the room in the first take, Jerry just ran out of the room immediately. Like, didn't do the scene the way he was supposed to because he was so scared. Like, he was just so kind of like, ah! Because, like, the way the scene actually happened, like, the way they did the scene to make it work right, so he'd fall at the right time, because obviously they're not really hitting him with a hammer, is they had a different, like, person grabbing at Jerry's belt and pulling him down as the swing happens. But the first time he was just so scared he like ran, like ripped away from the guy who was supposed to pull him down and just ran away before the scene was able to happen. I thought that was a fun little anecdote from set. So, you know, Leatherface, he's a creepy dude. But yeah, then after he knocks him down, Leather like freaks out and he runs to the window and like is looking for more people because once again, Leatherface is sympathetic. He's like, what the crap's happening? Why are all these people coming into my house? Why do I have to keep killing these people? Is there anyone else out here? Like, he's freaking out and then, like, sits down to, like, think about it and, like, licks his teeth really weirdly. But, you know.
Oh, dude, yes. We see it through, like, the hole in the face mask.
Yeah. It's a really cool shot, but it's once again, like, a situation where you're like, crap, I really do feel bad for Leatherface. Like, that like shot of him like freaking out, looking around like out the window. He's like worried there's more people he has to kill. He's like, why are these people coming into my house? I'm just trying to stay in my home. I mean, don't get me wrong. Yeah, killing people is still the wrong answer. I want to make sure that is clear. Please don't try to quote me saying that killing people is right. I did not say that, except for right there.
If somebody comes in your home and you didn't explicitly invite them over, you should kill them.
I'm not saying that.
That is a joke.
I am not saying that. But I am saying I do feel bad for Leatherface because he is like pretty obviously his character has special needs. Like he's very like, which once again, that's a whole, we've had this discussion before, but I'll bring it up every time because I feel like it is something that needs to be said, and I wish horror stopped doing it. I am tired of horror making characters with special needs the monsters, because in real life, the statistics are that someone with special needs is more likely to be the victim of violence than to perpetrate it. It does, horror, you need to stop doing this. But they didn't, and a lot of these movies have it. So
very clear that Leatherface is like mentally still a child.
And yeah, it's definitely a thing where Gunnar...
Which is probably part of that whole sound design where he giggles like a little girl.
Yes. And Gunnar Hansen specifically, once again, also specifically modeled his character after people with special needs. Like he went... Apparently, I don't remember the name of the place, but there is some like it's called like an institute. It's in Austin near UT, I believe, where there's like a bunch of people with special needs there, and he went there and like kind of just hung around for I don't remember if it was 2 days or 2 weeks, like just kind of watching the people, to, like kind of try to get their mannerisms down and try to act like someone with special needs because he wanted to try to portray this character the best. So I guess, at least in Gunnar Hansen's mind, Leatherface was supposed to be special needs. I can't 100% say that was in the script. I haven't read the script. I don't know if that was Tobe Hooper's vision or if that was specifically Gunnar taking the character and doing something with himself. I don't know, but the character is definitely supposed to be modeled off of someone with special needs. Gunnar Hansen, went to this institute with people with special needs. Once again, there's fun fact: those clips are from a different time, and he keeps using the R word about them, and it was kind of cringy to hear him talk about it that way. It was like, okay, all right. But, it's a different time. We now, as a society, realize, hey, that word can be hurtful. At the time, in, 98, when he filmed this, because he died in, 2003, we as a society didn't realize that word isn't as acceptable then. I mean, even in my life, I used to just use that word as a joke when I was talking about my friends being stupid. People make mistakes and people grow. I assume Gunnar Hansen would have not used that word if he, got to live long. Well, I don't know. He was an old white man. If he got to live longer, he probably would still use that word. Because old white people, sometimes it's hard for old white people to change. It happens.
Very obstinate, if you will.
Yeah. So, where did I leave off on all that? He licks his teeth. And now, what word is that supposed to be? Don't know. There's a word in between now and back here that I don't know what it is. So I'm just going to cut it out because it's not needed. Now back at the van, Sally and Franklin freak out about their friends who haven't come back. There's a word in the middle there.
It's dark.
Yeah, it's now nighttime and they're freaking out because, hey, why aren't they back yet? This is not good. Okay, that's fair. It's not good that they're not back yet. Sally wants to go to look for them, but Franklin won't let her, and he's like, "No, we shouldn't. Let's just leave. We'll go find help and come back for them." Once again, kind of showing that Franklin is kind of not a good person as well. There are reasons to not like Franklin. He's he's like, "Nah, let's just go." And she's like, "But no, what if they come back and we're not here? They'll freak out." He's like, "It'll be fine." But Franklin, he can't leave because, oh crap, Jerry has the car keys. Or the van keys.
Yeah, he does.
So Sally and Franklin keep arguing kind of at this point, and then she's like, all right, fine, I'm going to go look for them. You stay here. And he's like, no, don't do that. Let me go with you. It's like, but I can't be dealing with pushing you out there right now. I need to find them. But he's like, no, I'm going to go. And then she, as a good sister, reluctantly goes, all right, fine, and pushes him. But she has a solid point of the first time in this movie where someone points out him being in a wheelchair as a solid reason for something is
valid reason.
Hey,
yeah.
That's not out in the dark right now. That's not a good thing for me to have to deal with pushing you right now. You just stay here. And he's like,
dude, yeah.
No! Blows raspberries at the sky. He doesn't really blow raspberries there. That was a comedic joke from Austin.
One of many.
I like to think that this podcast is marked as comedy on YouTube. Is it? Sometimes? Sometimes we just read what happened in the movie. But I feel like this episode, we've all tried to be funnier than normal. Maybe. Not on purpose. It just kind of happened. Where was I, though? Franklin and Walter Ghost, they leave together. They look around in the dark for a little while before Leatherface pops up and chainsaws Franklin. And just
right down the middle.
Rips him open. I believe this is another scene that Edwin Neal mentioned that people are sure they saw him cut in half, and he's like, nope. No, you don't.
You see Franklin's back, and you see him drop his flashlight,
and you see a little bit of blood splatter, hit Leatherface. Which, fun fact, was the art director the makeup artist Tobe Hooper and Franklin's actor with fake blood in their mouth, just spitting it out at him to kind of get that blood splatter look.
They couldn't have put it in a ketchup bottle or something? They're like, we gotta spit it at you.
It's all in their mouth.
They're blowing raspberries. Are you telling me they're blowing raspberries at him?
I think they might be. I didn't realize that, but yes, they are. Spume. They are blowing raspberries to make the blood come out.
Fun fact, the audio designer had to cut out the sound of Franklin blowing raspberries. See?
Yeah.
There's natural defense, like an octopus's ink.
Sally then runs away while Leatherface chases her with a chainsaw. This is kind of, once again, I could be wrong because I'm not a horror historian, but due to knowing when this movie came out and when other movies came out, I think this is one of our first cat and mouse scenes in a horror movie. which is a huge staple of slasher films. We've covered it in like pretty much every movie we've watched. That's except for like Boy's Choice was different because it was some more modern horror, so it was a little different there. But cat and mouse chases are so big in slashers, and this is one of the first ones. It goes on for maybe a little longer than it should, but hey, it's the first time. They don't realize what they're doing quite yet when it comes to the cat and mouse. So during this prolonged cat and mouse scene where she's running all over the place, the first place she heads is to the Sawyer house, and she closes the door on Leatherface, so he carves up the door. It will be important later with a line. She then heads up to stairs, and she finds Grandpa and dead, shriveled up Grandma. She, at the time, thinks that Grandpa is dead because he looks dead, but we find out later, Grandpa is somehow still kicking it, I believe. 124 is what the canonical age of him is at this point. Supposed to be.
That's my favorite scene in this whole movie. I can't wait to get to that. Yeah.
It's all that good old human meat.
Yeah, I guess
Keep him young.
he's a vampire. I believe Franklin calls Hitchhiker a vampire in the car. So maybe the family is vampires. It's actually a vampire movie.
It's an homage to Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah.
As she's about to go downstairs, Leatherface gets inside, and he chases her back upstairs. She then jumps out of a 2-story window, as you do. Chris can do it, of course. We will find that out in the first ever live show.
And belly flops.
Yeah.
Like, no tuck and roll, just like...
Yeah. She, falls to her feet first, at least, so she only breaks her ankle. She wouldn't have probably hurt her stomach. But yeah.
You guys have the old tuck and rolls done.
Then she does some more running, and she runs into a branch, but then gets back up before it matters, because Leatherface, he closes the distance a little bit, but never actually gets to her, so I don't know why this branch scene was even there. I guess to add tension, you're like, oh no, is she going to get killed?
Yeah.
But she doesn't.
She's not.
She doesn't. Leather, now much closer, she continues to run to the gas station, as it is known, head on down to Bastrop, Texas. And she runs inside, and, Drayton helps her and consoles her. He then, he's like, all right, I'm going to go get the truck. And I think he might say he's going to take her to the hospital, but he's going to get her some help, at the very least, is what he's saying. So he leaves to go get the truck. And she seems mesmerized by the meat cooking, which I've gone back and watched it I think I've, rewound the first time I watched it, when I first watched it, a while earlier this year, not for the podcast, trying to, see if I saw anything in the meat that looked specifically human, to, try to understand why she's so mesmerized by the meat. I can't. Yeah. I tried. I really wanted to be oh, does she see a rib cage in there of a human? And she goes, oh crap! And this is her realizing that bad stuff is happening, because she kind of feels like she's realizing something's happening already at this point. But
yeah,
there's no specific. Maybe she's just, or probably the actual what's supposed to be happening is this girl's just been through trauma, so she's zoning out. That's probably what's supposed to be happening.
In shock.
Yeah.
It's also the whole, Leatherface was chasing her and kind of right on her tail all the way up until this gas station, and now for some reason he's just not pursuing her, or he's not pursuing her inside of the gas station.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that he was right there the entire time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you think the gears are kind of turning in her head about that? I mean, yeah.
And the door's wide open.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
There's no reason that Leatherface couldn't just, come waltzing in or hack up the old guy. Although we know now that there's very specific reasons why he wouldn't hack up the old guy.
Yeah.
I want to say the barbecue has some significance just because of the camera zoom.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Felt
I don't know what it
had
is.
to have because of how poignant that zoom was. But
we're meant to pay attention to it in some
unless
way.
it's them just Tobe Hooper trying to be hey, get this shot in to tie it back to the possible sub theme of the meat industry. Maybe this is just me hey, remember this movie's about meat. If it is, maybe it's not.
If it is, yeah.
That's the thing about art and interpretation. It could have been exactly what he meant. It could have not been. Who knows? I mean, there might be interviews where he tells us what he meant. I don't know. I didn't find those interviews when I was looking about this movie. But yeah, Drayton comes back in with what's it say? A burlap sack and a rope. Sally immediately starts to freak out because you don't want to see someone coming in at you with a burlap sack and a rope. It's not a good thing.
Top of the list for things I don't want to see when I'm helpless at a gas station.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Drayton then repeatedly hits her with a broom, which I'm not going to call this a fun fact, but I'll call it a fact about on set. He really does hit her with the broom. And you might go immediately like, oh, great. Wow, great. He's so bad. Which she wanted him to because, I mean, her / Toby Hooper wanted him to, which Toby Hooper wanting him to do it is like, oh, great. A director doesn't care about his people. But, like, apparently the Jim Sedow is a good human being and was, like, pulling back a lot in the first couple takes because he didn't want to hurt this girl.
Hit a girl with a broom? Yeah.
But apparently, it was like, Toby Hooper's like, it doesn't look real, and like we can't give you a rubber one either because that won't look real. Just hit her, and even like by like the last one of the later takes, the actress plays Sally. Was it Marilyn Burns, I believe? Was like, please just hit me, just hit me for real. Like it's fine, just do it. Let's just get the scene.
Stop being whacked with a broom. For
I think it was something like
minutes.
8 takes before he gets it right. Of him beating her with a broom. So yeah, he eventually, beats her with a broom for real, and that's what we see in the movie. And that kind of knocks her down and knocks her out a little bit, and he starts to tie her up, and he gags her, and he puts the bag over her head. Then carries her to the truck. Then he leaves the truck and goes, gotta go turn off the light because the electric bill will ruin me. The first I think at this point of really good dark comedy. There's a couple more scenes in this movie as we continue that I feel like do really good dark comedy, and this is that.
Yeah, like having small talk. Yeah,
yeah. This is the first one where he's like, oh crap, I gotta go turn off the light because that's important right now, and I'm kidnapping a girl. Is making sure I don't leave the light on.
We even get some good dark slapstick comedy. Not too far from now.
We do. I would argue another.
Not a sentence I thought I'd ever say.
I actually think we almost immediately are getting some more darkly comedic stuff is once he gets back in after the light, he starts to, drive her to the house, and he just the way he just pokes her is like, are you okay down there? And pokes her as she's screaming, is just once again darkly comedic. You're like, what the heck is wrong with this dude? I love it.
Dude,
for the sake of the movie, obviously. Once again, I do not condone beating women with a broom. I want to make sure that's clear. But in this movie, it was very humorously done. I believe he's kind of just also trying to have, once again, have small talk with her while he's poking her with the broom. I don't know.
You comfortable down there?
Yeah, comfortable down there. He also talks about, I think I could be wrong, I could be misremembering, but I think he also talks about I don't wish I didn't have to do this kind of lines as well during this, as he's gleefully, smiling as he pokes her with this broken broom at this point. And you're just like, all right, okay, Drayton, you don't like poking her. You don't get any joy out of murder, as we find out later, as we see him have joy as he tortures this girl.
Murder?
Yeah.
He only has joy in complicit murder.
Yeah, as an accomplice.
Yeah.
Back at the house, we have Drayton get out of the car and reprimand the hitchhiker, be like, what'd you do? And he, beats him with, also, I believe, the piece of the broom. It might be a different piece of wood. I don't know. But he beats him with this wood. And this, once again, I'm going to keep doing it whenever it happens because I really enjoy good cinematography. This scene is so beautiful. The way it's, backlit by the truck lights in the, pitch darkness as he's, just beating him. But it's both beautiful, crazy, and funny all at the same time. And you're like, what? Okay. And one another, I guess, not fun fact, but just fact about the scene is he actually really did hit him with this piece of wood because that's what Toby Hooper said, you gotta really hit him. And Edwin Neal's like, was like at first like, oh man, does he really have to hit me every time? Like, why is he doing this? And like, but he's like, all right, he's sure it's gonna be okay. But then he was really disappointed when he saw it in the movie. And you can't even really tell he gets hit because it's like the way it's shot. Like you can't even see that he really hit me with this piece of wood.
All for naught.
Yeah.
Dang.
Then Drayton keeps referring to like Leatherface as the hitchhiker's brother. He also specifically is like, "Look what your brother did to the door!" when he sees the broken door, the cut up door from earlier. Also, I'll acknowledge it here because I've tried to source this information and it's hard. I believe, even though you would think watching this movie he's their father, Drayton is actually their older brother. I've seen that be stated a lot of places, but can't figure out where the source is. So it might not be true. I'm not 100% sure. But I think... Yeah, I think he comes across more fatherly. But...
Yeah.
In a twisted way, but he still feels more like an authoritarian.
Good old dad.
Like, there's an authoritarian nature to him. But I believe, due to how many places have it, like including like multiple Texas Chainsaw wikis, which I feel like those kind of people who want to make a Texas Chainsaw wiki are the kind of Texas Chainsaw Massacre nerds that would get their facts right. Like, if you're that dedicated to make a wiki about it, you probably care about making sure it's right. So he might be their older brother. So I just want to acknowledge it here because it feels weird. I would not have thought he was their brother.
Me neither.
And I thought I remember hearing like there was a line in the second movie, but I've watched that movie, I've seen that movie, and I don't remember hearing the line, so I don't know. He might be their older brother, but I also think, because once again, this is a franchise where the timeline changes it a couple times, I believe in at least one of the parts of the timeline, he is his father. So, I don't know. I'm just going to leave it there. I don't know. He might be the brother. There is technically never a line where he says that specifically make him their father, so it could work in this movie. Like, I would argue when you say, look what your brother did, does imply not our brother.
Right. Not mine, yeah.
But it still doesn't directly say it can't be. You know? Like, so it's one of those things where he might be the older brother. I tried to find it, and it sounds like it depends on the timeline, but according to the first timeline, he's supposed to be, and this is obviously the first time, so I guess he is. I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't think that's misinformation. I think he is their brother, but I'm not sure. I really tried to, like, find definitive, like, proof, and I can't. So...
In this movie, he definitely is a father.
I mean, but the thing is, he's kind of not, though. He could just be a much older brother. Like, that's the thing is, like, I see what you're saying. Like, he does come across fatherly, but he could also be an older brother who helped raise them. Like, that, there are relationships like that. It's like, there's nothing about his character that directly says has to be. I don't know. So, once again, here's the thing. In this movie, if you only want to watch this movie, he can be the father, or he can be the older brother. It really doesn't matter. I don't know if there's a movie where it specifically does matter. Because once again, I tried to do my research and couldn't find the information other than a bunch of people saying, you know, he's their older brother. And I'm like, okay, I guess he's the older brother. So,
all right.
Sorry if it's wrong. Look what you did to Thor. Then once he's inside, he finds Leatherface in this kind of like motherly outfit. It's kind of the first depiction of Leatherface in more of a feminine garb. It is kind of a trait that Leatherface will have throughout the series, which is a whole different can of worms of horror not having good like trans representation, which we're not the people to discuss that. But there is an element of whenever you do see a trans character in a horror movie, it's almost always the villain, that's not good representation. But yeah, so I don't know why Leatherface specifically wears, you know, makeup and wigs and like women's clothing at some points in the series, but he does. And this is the first time we see that.
I suppose in terms of the story, you could interpret it as being, I mean, we know where their grandmother is. Yeah. Her corpse is up in the attic. This could be their mother. We know that there's an Ed Gein inspiration to the movie, so that's possible. In terms of theme, I don't know if I have a definite answer for this, but it's telling that there is no woman in this family.
Yeah.
And this is absolutely a big slasher trope, most centrally in the form of the final girl, almost always facing a masculine monster. And we can have debates about what that means, but this is certainly a trendsetter in that regard, with Michael Myers and Jason and Freddy and so forth facing a usually sleight of frame young girl. That matters, and I don't. They're making some kind of a statement. We can have
There's
debates about
tons
what
of
it
books
is.
written on it. Like if you want to get into like horror, like what's the word, like academia, there's a lot that you could like take from this stuff if you want to look at these movies like academically. Like the whole final girl trope, is it bad, is it good? Like there's a whole like, do horror movies promote violence against women? I don't think so, but there's a lot of people who will say it does. Like there's a lot to be said about the academia side of final girls / monstrous men chasing them. And let's be real, like this movie, the main guy runs around with a chainsaw, which you could definitely take some phallic inspiration. Like you could project that onto that, like a phallic messaging there very easily. Like, and I would argue there's in the second movie they really want you at times to think of the chainsaw as his penis. So yeah, there's a lot of nuanced discussion there that we're probably not the podcast for. Not that I'm saying we can't try. I'm just saying there are people who have like dedicated their lives to like studying the meaning behind some of this stuff that will give much better answers than I will. At best, I will half regurgitate it. I'm not saying we can't try to have these discussions. I'm just saying if these kind of discussions intrigue you, do some research because there's people who are more equipped to have them who will have better answers. So yeah. But yeah, so he's, and this is also the scene where I kind of referenced earlier, where Drayton, as he's like reprimanding him, he's kind of like, "Oh, did you let any of them get away?" Which, as he's like trying to like beat him, as Leatherface is trying to be like, "Oh," making grunts and like pointing at things with kind of like a feminine voice, because at this point Leatherface is playing the
in character,
which also like I've heard, I don't remember who I heard, I think it's probably the Dead Meat podcast. Once again, shout out to the podcast who's much bigger than us. They had a discussion where it's like how there is an element of like Leatherface filling, like, which I think that you kind of hinted at here, was like choosing to fill the motherly role because they don't have a mother anymore, kind of a thing. So like, but yeah, I don't know why I brought that up there. I did though. It's there.
It's there.
It's there. But yeah, and yeah. Also, which also could lead to the credence of Drayton. That's why I was going to bring it up. Is it could lead to the credence of Drayton is not their father, but is choosing to fill the fatherly role because they don't really have a father anymore. But the point is, Drayton is definitely, the way he's acting in this scene, you go, crap. Once again, the sympathetic Leatherface part of the story is of, if Leatherface did let any of these people get away, what the crap would Drayton do to him right now? Like, we saw what he did to the hitchhiker for just being there. Like, really, the hitchhiker hadn't done anything wrong according to what he knew, but he's like, "Oh, what did you do?" and starts beating him. So, like, what would he have done to Leatherface if he let someone get away who could have hurt their family by letting this get out? So Leatherface, in a weird way, is a victim. It's weird for the monstrous murderer to also be a victim in the story, but he is. Yeah. So yeah, after he does that, while he's doing that, the hitchhiker is tying Sally up to a chair. Sally is being tied to the chair. After the hitchhiker does that, he heads upstairs to grab Grandpa, and Sally is looking around, scared and struggles trying to escape. And once the hitchhiker and Leatherface, who helps them, gets Grandpa downstairs, they cut Sally's finger and have Grandpa like suck on it, and he does like a little happy dance, and it's amazing. Yeah, he does like a little. I believe the actor, who I once again did not write down his name, I'm sorry. He's actually was like a really young guy, which is really. I mean, obviously he's in a lot of makeup, but it's funny how young he was playing the guy. He was like in college, like most people. Like, he was not an old man at all playing this Grandpa character. And he said that like, Tobe Hooper's like one like direction on it was like, have you ever seen like a child like getting milk? Like that, like little happy dance they do sometimes. Like, he's like, do that.
It's so creepy.
Yeah.
This is the creepiest scene in the movie, in my opinion.
Yeah,
it's just chilling. Yeah.
Then that doesn't make sense there. Okay. Later in dinner, this dinner scene, Sally kind of passes out. Yeah, she passes out, and then a little bit later she wakes back up, and she starts screaming bloody murder, and the family just mocks her. Like, they're all just, like, mocking her, screaming, like, specifically, like, Leatherface and the hitchhiker. I mean, I think Drayton's more laughing while it's happening, while they're, like, screaming back at her and crying back at her. It's just, once again, like, this whole, like, scene we're about to discuss, this whole dinner scene is just so scary and so visceral and awesome. I love it. And Sally is just begging for mercy from Drayton because she thinks, like, hey, he seems the most normal of them. Let me try to get him. She's like, you can stop them. And Leather and the hitchhiker get in her face and kind of start torturing her. And this is also once again where she's like, you can stop them. Please make them stop. And the hitchhiker's like, he's just the cook. He can't do anything. And, like, he doesn't, like killing like we do. He just, But I believe this is also where Drayton goes like, I don't take any pleasure in killing, but what's got to be done's got to be done, kind of a mantra.
And he kind of like flinches away for a little bit, but then turns back to,
he's definitely intrigued by this. And the hitchhiker says that him and Leatherface do all the work. Sally desperately pleads for her life, and darkly creepy the way she says it, because it's the implication, she doesn't say what she says, but the implication is the way she says I'll do anything, at least my mind goes to crap, she's willing to be violated if it means she saves her life, which is that's dark, and it's just it's so heavy, this part of the movie. And then we get these, once again, just you go to these such a dark scene to the dichotomy of cutting to these beautiful individual shots of her eyeball that is just strikingly beautiful cinematography of really close shot of her eyes. You see her eyes getting bloodshot a little bit, it's
the tears welling up and everything.
And she just continues to scream some more, and the family just laughs at her. As she's just in mortal, not mortal, but just in danger. She is in mortal danger. She could die if something when that they want to kill her. And they're just laughing about it. That's how much they don't care. And the hitchhiker wants to let Grandpa kill her because he's the best at killing. And then we get another close up of her screaming in her eyes. And we hear the flashbulb sound effect go off. One of the only other times it's used in the movie besides that opening. And it's, once again, it's used well in this movie. It's not used just because it was iconic in this movie like it is in some of the sequels and remakes. But
what's going on? Does the hitchhiker take a picture?
No, to be fair, this scene you could say, oh, why do they do it in this scene? This shows that it can be done when it's not a picture. But it was, I didn't see him take a picture. I think it is just, that sound effect sounded cool. Let's throw it on this shot and we have a flash. But that is what the other movies do worse. And you could argue that yes, it shouldn't have probably even been in this scene. But it still adds to the scene because it was so well done in the beginning. When you see it here, oh, creepy sound. At least that's what I thought. But they then prep her for Grandpa to kill her. Then in a very darkly comedic slapstick scene, Grandpa is so old that he can't hold the hammer to kill her, and he just keeps dropping it and Leatherface is holding his hand trying to help him, and he still just can't do it. Eventually, after 5 or 6 at least attempts, he eventually gets a good whack at her and bloodies the back of her head a little bit.
Yeah.
Then then Leather tried to help him. Already said that without reading it. Then once, I guess because he's just getting excited, the hitchhiker's like, "Oh, let me do it. Let me help." she escapes. And we'll get back to her escaping real quick. I just want to have a little fun. Once again, it's not really a fun fact. It's kind of just a poor people who were in this movie fact. The dinner scene, the exact number fluctuates between who says it, but it's somewhere in the 24 to 30 hour range. How long it took to film this scene?
What?
Yeah, in this like really, hot, dark room with like no sunlight and all this, and there's like the food that was like supposed to be in the scene that they're supposed to be eating and stuff at times was sitting there for so long that it started to go bad, like, and because it was so hot and whatnot, and like also like it was so hot that some of like the bone, like the bone, no, it wasn't specifically the heat, it was the bone lamps and whatnot. The light was so hot / the heat outside the bone started to like burn, so you have like burning flesh smell added to the rotten meat that's in front of it. Like it's just,
okay.
Yeah, it's like it's just disgusting in this
Brutal.
room. And they're in there for 20 plus hours. Like a minimum of 24 hours.
Wow.
I think the number I heard more often was 26, but I did hear at least one person say like 24, and then I saw there was one person who tried to say like 36. So like it's somewhere in that range, but more people, I think there was a couple people who said 26. So we'll go with that. But like still 26 hours filming this one scene, and because they had to film it all in one scene. The reason they had to do that was because not one scene, yeah, it's all one scene, but they had to film it all at once was because the grandpa, they only made like 3 sets of the makeup, and this was the last one, so they had to get it all done that day.
I see.
Because they could not take it off and redo it. It was over. They had to do it. So, yeah. She escapes, and she jumps out of another window. Because that's what she does.
Metal.
Signature move.
Apparently, I believe she says that in this scene, because they wouldn't let her actually jump out of the actual sugar glass, but they did have her like jump off of like a thing, like some sort of like raised platform, and she actually like hurt her ankle, and that's why she's hobbling in the rest of this movie.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Good.
yeah.
Yeah.
So she hobbles away from the hitchhiker and Leatherface as they both chase her. The hitchhiker is fast enough to catch up with her, but is such a sick freak that rather than like killing her, he just has fun slashing her back. Like he's close enough that he could do damage. He could actually do something, but he's having more fun just like playfully using his knife to slash her in the back just to cause torture, because he's a freak.
Yeah.
Um.
It chases her out into the middle of the road
Yeah.
where he meets a semi.
Yeah. Gets taken down by a semi truck. Then the
Very
truck driver.
chunky driver.
Yeah, he gets out to help her escape, but then sees Leatherface and does an immediate turn around and runs away. And she follows him, and they both get in the truck. But then, I guess, because Leatherface cut the door, they decided not to use the truck to escape, and they go out the other door. Like, I mean, he didn't, like, cut through the door. Like, he didn't do enough damage that truck couldn't run. But they went, all right, crap, he's here. We gotta get out of the truck rather than leave in it.
Yes, dude. It's
Yeah. And easily one of the most confusing parts of, the movie and its choices.
Yeah.
They go, he's slashed at the door, time to get out of the other side of the truck and run around the truck a little bit.
yeah. Another precedent of slasher movies. This one, the case of infuriating main character choices. Like,
Yeah. But,
Yeah.
I will say for this movie, it does do that less than other movies. Maybe because, they're just setting,
Yes,
they're
it
setting
does.
the groundwork.
It's really
They're
the
starting the groundwork, and everyone else copied it badly.
yeah.
But yeah, so they get out, and they run away, while they're chasing them. And the truck driver takes his monkey wrench, yeah, and he hits Leatherface in the head, and knocks Leatherface down, and Leatherface falls with the chainsaw, and it hits his own leg, cutting into him. Which, yeah, that's cool.
I don't know if that's how chainsaws worked back in the day, but once you take your finger off the gas, the chainsaw stops.
Yeah.
But this chainsaw just keeps on going.
To be fair, I do believe his
Yeah,
hand is
take your
still
buddy,
on the chainsaw the whole time. He just falls with it. I mean, you're right, he should have took his hand off, but I do believe his hand was on the chainsaw the whole time. Like he falls and drops it on his like leg while still holding it. I mean, to give the movie ever so slight credit there, like, yeah, sure, it's also just, hey, it's a horror movie. They wanted to do a cool scene where they cut his own leg. He was holding it while he did it, so maybe it's possible. Also, maybe, I don't know, who knows. Or it was a mistake. Also, hey, like we've already established, Leatherface is not all there. Maybe he did hold it the whole time and didn't think to stop holding it.
He was gripping in pain.
Yeah.
From being hit with a wrench.
And the chance, yeah.
Also, I guess a little fun fact about the scene where he drops it on him. The reason, like, he, like, kind of, in the end of the shot, like, you see him, like, grab for his leg, which, yes, that makes sense for the character, but the actor was actually, like, grabbing at his leg. Because the way they did this scene was they had a piece of metal on his leg, and then, like, some blood packs and, like, a stake. And, like, then under his pants, like, right where it would be. And so he cuts cuts through and like immediately cuts through the clothes, the blood, and the meat, and like hits the metal and like starts heating it up a lot. So his leg starts getting a little burned. So he thinks, "Crap, this chainsaw is cutting my leg," because he just feels pain in his leg with a chainsaw on it. So so he's immediately grabbing for it, and that's why. I mean, it adds to the thing, and it's a completely reasonable reaction when you have a chainsaw hit your leg. But yeah, a little fun fact there. And then the truck driver, he just runs forever, never to be seen again. Runs.
That's it. Yeah.
No answer where he's still running. Some say.
Forrest Gump style. Just still running.
Then a blue pickup truck rolls up. He kind of goes past, but then, like, does a U-turn around. Like, I guess saw her and like wanted to help her, so she hops in the back right before Leatherface was able to get back up and almost get to her. And they drive off, and she starts to like laugh maniacally and like joy, like, which kind of shows that like her character is broken, like, which is nice. Like most characters in this moment should be crying, like the trauma they just went through. But she's so messed up now by this. She's laughing. She's so happy, and like it adds to like her. But also part of the reason she's laughing so like believably there is because it's real. They had shot this scene once, and it didn't work. So they had to like bring her back after she had gotten home that day to do it again. So she's like genuinely just laughing in joy that she's done with this 30-day hell shoot in Texas. Like in the heat of summer in Texas. Like, so yeah. And then the movie ends with Leatherface doing his chainsaw dance, spinning around with his chainsaw. Once again, a really iconic shots of like him in the sunlight with him spinning around with the chainsaw.
Mm-hmm.
Before we go into our thoughts, I have a couple like closing facts that I thought were really interesting when I watched the documentaries about this movie. The movie was released in 1974, but due to the graphic nature of like the theming of the movie, it wasn't released in the UK until 1999.
Yep.
25 years later before it finally was approved for release in the United Kingdom. It was considered a video nasty, which is what they did for a lot of like horror movies. This is not the first video nasty. Video nasty is the term they used whenever like movies are too bad and they can't be distributed in the UK. And there's a lot of horror movies that got it. I believe some of like the Friday the 13th films also were given that. It's like this is not the first video nasty we watched. I know Zombie was also one that was like there, but the regime and power of like censorship there was very strict, and they wouldn't let some stuff happen. Like a lot of horror movies had to either get really cut or wouldn't be allowed to be released at all. And this movie, they were like, we don't know what to cut. Well, the reason we think this movie is bad is because of the feel of the whole movie. We can't cut any individual scene because the whole movie just feels so heavy and dark and like
unsettling.
They're like,
if this movie makes me feel icky
inside. The thing is, I believe one of the quotes was actually like from like someone was like, hey, you could give this to like a more reasonable person and they watch it and see maybe the artistry of it. But you put this in like I don't remember what area they said, but they said some like specific like probably poorer area, I assume, of like England, and they're like, oh, those people, those commoners, could basically like, if they saw this movie, they would, who knows what it would do to them. So yeah, it was banned. The movie was also
classic English.
Had some real bad funding issues where they like couldn't get the funding, so they made a deal with a mafia-owned company that
What?
basically got rid of like all of their like financial rights for the movie for the most part, and it ended up leading into a lawsuit that I believe they kept referring to them as the Texans. So I guess that's everyone who was working on the movie, because it was, I think, like a New York mafia company. I mean, I don't remember for sure, but like, yeah. So the Texans won the lawsuit and got like $400,000 back to pay out the people like who worked on the movie, who like all the actors had like shares of the movie, but like their first paychecks were like $40, because due to the way that the funding ended up happening with the mafia, they only now technically had a percent of the percent that Toby Hooper and the other producers still had. And like the mafia company had more of it. I don't remember the name of what movie company the mafia was running. That was actually, it wasn't like, they weren't like going to mafia movies. Like it was some company that was apparently known mafia people at the time, though. Like one, I think the art director was talking about that. Like, oh, everyone knew they were mafia, but they still did business with them. And yeah, you know, they ended up getting a lawsuit of like $400,000, even though the movie did make $30 million at the box office, which means the mafia still made out with most of that money. So yeah, that's the end of the facts about this movie. We'll go right into final thoughts. As once again, like always, you can tell my final thoughts because I'm the one who leads the discussion. So my my thoughts come through a little more as we discuss the movie. But yeah, I love this movie. It's not like my favorite horror movie of all time, but man, do I just love it. I love the bleakness of it. I love the dark comedy of it. I think it's beautiful. I also really respect the historical significance for it. Like, even some of the flaws I might have with the movie, I'm willing to immediately just look the other way, because it's like, well, yeah, it's the first like slasher. Of course it's gonna have a couple, like, this is a movie made by like a guy who had no experience making a movie in the 70s. It's not gonna be exactly the most entertaining movie at certain points. I get that, like, that kind of stuff, but like, I love it. I've fallen in love with slasher films, as it's come to be knowledge on this podcast, and if it wasn't for this movie, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So I love this movie for the fact that it exists, despite the fact that it is then also a really well-made movie that I enjoy. So yeah. Chris.
I would say I also enjoy this movie. Overall, the feel is very eerie and unsettling, especially for a slasher movie. I think it does it well. A lot of like modern slashers tend to be kind of on the more goofier side, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But this, it really sets the tone, and sets the bar for like slasher flicks, it just in general. And yeah, just all of the juxtaposition of like the utter terrifying like sequences that occur with some of like the really playful music that plays in the background, and like the laughing, just those scenes in particular are just especially chilling to me. And anything that can give me chills gets at least one thumbs up, but this one I'll give 2 thumbs up. Thanks, weird, unsettling grandpa and sucking on fingies. Really, really made me feel uncomfortable.
Yep.
But yeah, really well shot. The set designs were really, really well done. All that for a movie that was kind of the first of its kind, and clearly had budgetary limitations thanks to the mafia. But well done.
Well, I'll have to acknowledge that I might just be seeing the same picture in the ink blot, because I know I've talked about this before, like tangentially when we brought up Stephen King, and I think in the first episode, the very first one with Friday the 13th. But it seems to be either saying, like making a statement or asking a question about American culture and from like a culture that arose from the frontier, something along those lines. With the whole beginning news segment, I think that strongly suggests that there is either like we're either meant to think, oh, this is a phenomenon of violence that's happening around America and even around the world, or if it's not making that statement directly, just saying like pointing out, that, oh, this is a fear or a concern in American society about like is the time we're living in more violent than other times? Is this an especially bloody period that we're going through? Right. I mean, that was on people's minds during Vietnam, and it's kind of remained that way. I think I mean, from 50 years after the movie, I think we can say with the benefit of hindsight, that's just kind of an attitude that springs up a lot whenever social tumult happens. But um, it's a question that the movie asks, I think. Like, are there particularly like bloody points of time, or is this a human nature thing? I don't know. I think the point the movie might make, especially with regards to the clock, um, is that this is not that there are not like uniquely violent periods of time, but when you again like the whole journey is out into the wilderness, and it starts off in the setting of an abandoned house that once had children being reared in it and family, and now like a lot of the walls are gone. It's been taken over by animals and insects, and the only civilization or human stamp that's replaced the family that once was there is this art of bones from dead bodies and humans and animals, things like that. So, and again, like we know that that's left by a totally womanless family. So I don't know. I think it's making some kind of a statement about like the endurance of the frontier, where that has never really been tamed, perhaps in America. And you go, I mean, there's a reason it's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's not the Maryland Chainsaw Massacre, right? Like the setting is very much a character in the movie, especially at the end when we see Leatherface just like gyrating in the sunset next to the fields, not a building to be seen. I don't know. Um, I know it's kind of indefinite because I don't know if I've really landed on what the point is meant to be, but it seems to be exploring the idea that you know, at least in America, maybe in human nature in general, as civilization wanes, this leather faces bubble up, right? Like this kind of violence starts to rule the land, and that's still a phenomenon in America. I don't know, but I enjoy that theme, and I've seen it in other things before. Stephen King particularly seems to be really afraid of the American interior, like with Into the Tall Grass and a bunch of other books, things like that. Um, but I don't know. It's an interesting precedent that was set for a lot of horror following it. Characters leaving civilization naively and just kind of blundering through a more remote area and finding things they're not prepared for. It's a cool precedent to set, in my opinion. So thumbs up for me.
Cool. That's our thoughts. And next week we're gonna cover the sequel, which is a very different movie. I still like it. Once again, it's the only one of the ones I've seen. But I want to just prepare people. It's a different movie. It's still made by Tobe Hooper. It was made I think it was made in '88. So it's 14 years later, and it's a much different style of movie. It's a much more comedic. But it is still a good movie, and we're going to watch that next week. And one of probably the last times we're going to enjoy the Texas Chainsaw Massacre for a little while, at the very least. But yeah, if you like this podcast and you're listening to it in an audio platform, hey, if you could give us a 5-star review and also tell a friend personally, that's all cool. We'd love to grow this podcast. We want more people to see it. Yeah. We also have a Patreon. Patreon.com/horrorboys, where you could literally directly, support us, help us buy some of these movies we have to watch. That'd be cool, But, yeah, I've been Austin, and that's been Chris and Isaiah, and we'll be back next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.